All right. Well, welcome everyone to our Live Well webinar on February 3rd. Here we are in 2021. I'm Liz Joy. I'm going to serve as your moderator and facilitator this evening. Thanks again to everybody for joining us. I'm really excited this evening to have Lynsie Perry joining us. I'm sure Lynsie is familiar to many of you because she is our caregiver Live Well host on Yammer. So probably many of you are seeing her posts on Yammer, and of course, Lynsie is a big part of our Caregiver Live Well program. She serves as a health promotion specialist here at Intermountain. She received her bachelor's degree in exercise and sports science at the University of Utah, as well as a master's degree in health administration from Weber State University. She's also a certified health and wellness coach through Well Coaches and is helping to lead our health coaching steering committee. She has worked for Intermountain for 12 years now and really enjoys connecting with others as they make positive changes and find joy in their lives, the great wellness mission. And her personal mission is to find happiness within herself and share that with others. And outside work, she has lots of interests and enjoys spending time with her family and reading and traveling, in some type of non-COVID world, that is. And today, Lynsie is going to talk with us about self-care to be your best self. And there's no time like the present for that when we're all trying to deal with the pandemic. Please put your questions into the chat. I'll try and keep track of that. And at the end of Lynsie's presentation, we'll have time for some Q&A. And Lynsie, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Dr. Joy. You're making me blush a little bit here. So thank you for that nice introduction. So excited to be here tonight to talk to you about a topic that's really important to me that I find that I'm really passionate about. And that is, again, like Dr. Joy said, self-care to be your best self. So I want to start with a little story. This is a picture of my car. My car and I get along really well. This was when I very first bought my car, and we have a really good relationship. But what I've discovered is my car does not like me to negotiate with it, especially when it comes to putting fuel in it. About a year ago, I was driving this car, and I thought I knew how far, and I should rephrase, my husband was actually driving it. And I thought I knew how far I could push this car as far as when I needed to fill it up with gas. And I told him, oh, don't worry. I've run it this low before because it was very low. The light was on. I said, I know we can make it to where we're going. I've done this before. No problem. We're going to make it. Well, lo and behold, we got stuck in traffic on the freeway. And I was stressing because I kept watching that fuel thing get lower and lower and lower, and trying to get off the freeway, get to a gas station, and we did run out of gas. We coasted. Thankfully, when you get off the freeway, it's downhill, and we coasted, and there was a gas station like right off the freeway, and we literally ran on fumes, literally coasted right into the gas station. And that was very stressful, and I have learned since then that I cannot negotiate with my car on filling it up, giving it gas. And you're probably wondering, like, what does this have to do with self-care? And I share the story because self-care really is the fuel in which we fuel our bodies, our minds, and our spirit. And just the same as fuel for our car, getting gas in our car is non-negotiable. I actually also think that fueling our bodies with good self-care is also non-negotiable. But a lot of times when we think about self-care, we think about that's something that will be nice to have. That's a luxury. I'll do that someday when I have time. I would actually again argue to say that self-care is not a luxury. It's actually a necessity. And so I want to spend a little bit of time talking about what is self-care. And what I love about self-care is actually that it's going to look a little bit different for each of us. There are some basics of self-care that are the same, that we all need. And so I think that self-care is a little bit, it's how we take care of ourselves. It's the balance of movement, rest, and how we fuel our bodies. It's the way we challenge and quiet our minds. And it's the people that we surround ourselves with and how we spend our time. So again, we know we all need physical activity. We need healthy foods to fuel our body. We need to get enough sleep and exercise and all of those things. Those are some common things that we all need for self-care. But the other ingredients that make up our own personal self-care, I think those are unique, and those can change and be different depending on the person. So again, self-care is the fuel for our mind, our body, and our spirit. But a definition that I really love of self-care comes from Lori Buchanan, and she says that self-care is a deliberate choice to gift ourselves with people, places, things, and opportunities that recharge our personal battery and promote whole health, body, mind, and spirit. And there's a few things that I love about this definition of self-care. I love that she says it's a deliberate choice. Because in my mind, what that implies is that self-care won't just happen. It's not random, but we have to prioritize it. We have to be very intentional about scheduling in time for our own self-care, because if we don't schedule it in, it won't happen, and our schedules will get filled up with other priorities. I love that she says that self-care is a gift, and she says also that it could be people, could be places, could be things, and could be opportunities, depending on who you are, depending on what it is that fills your tank. I am a people person for sure, and so for me, connecting with others, connecting with people, that really is self-care for me. For my husband, he's more of an introvert. So actually quiet time, going to a place up in the mountains, outdoors in nature, that is self-care for him, that alone time, that time away from people. And I love that she says that self-care is really what refuels us or recharges our personal battery to help promote whole body health within ourselves. So I love this definition of self-care. A few major premises of self-care. A lot of us are really good. I, as a mom, have become really good at delegating things, but unfortunately, self-care is the one thing that we cannot delegate. No one can do self-care for us. No one will do self-care for us. So the responsibility of, ensuring that we get self-care really lies within us. So we have to, again, be really deliberate, be intentional about ensuring that we get and schedule in and prioritize that time for us to get our self-care. Self-care promotes wellness and well-being. In fact, a lot of self-care activities are also those activities that help us with our wellness and with our well-being, such as physical activity, getting enough sleep, eating fruits and vegetables, not eating too much sugar. All of those things are what promote wellness and well-being. And so it makes sense that without self-care, it would be really hard to have that sense of wellness and well-being. In addition, practicing good self-care really helps to reduce the risk of illness in all dimensions. So those things that we are more susceptible to based on our own circumstances, we become more susceptible to them when we are lacking in self-care. For example, for me, I am a really anxious person. I've struggled with some anxiety in my life. And I know that if I don't practice good self-care, it really sets me up to feeling anxious, to having those moments of anxiety. But when I'm practicing really good self-care, I'm able to kind of mitigate that and to work through those things so that I don't end up in that kind of anxious anxiety attack kind of place. Again, like the quote says, self-care requires a clear commitment to achieve, because there are always going to be obstacles in the way. There are always going to be competing priorities and other things that are going to try to invade our space and get in the way of doing self-care. So knowing what our self-care is and then creating that clear commitment that we're going to prioritize self-care, that's really necessary in order to ensure that we all get the self-care that we need. Self-care enables us to have well-being especially or even when external factors are not ideal. Now, I think we've just come out of a year and we're still living in it where external factors are not ideal. And it maybe have been easier or harder to get through it depending on whether you were able to practice some good self-care, even when those external factors are not ideal. And when we are practicing good self-care, it really helps us to work through those situations when those external factors are not what we had hoped, or when there's, that uncertainty. It makes it that much easier for us to be able to get through those hard times when we're practicing really good self-care. And then, like I mentioned a moment ago, we each have a unique way of doing self-care, and not to like mix analogies, but I am going to mix analogies a little bit. Self-care is the fuel that fills our tank, but we also each have our own unique self-care recipe, if you will. And so we will have our own unique ingredients that fall under our own self-care recipe. So what works for others may be different than what works for you. So it's up to you to kind of experiment, and we're going to talk about that, and discover what really works, or what your self-care recipe looks like, or in essence, what is the fuel that fills your tank? What is it that gives you energy to be your best self? So as you're thinking about your self-care recipe, and so maybe you haven't thought about this before, but I would challenge all of you to really think through what does your self-care recipe look like? What are those ingredients that you know are non-negotiable for you, that are a necessity? You know that you need them in order to be your best self. And so the question that I would ask for you is, what does self-care look like for you right now? So asking, and you can kind of think through that by asking yourself these 3 questions. And these have really helped me actually, even over the last year, almost on a day-to-day basis, figure out what is it that I need for self-care right now. So asking yourself, what is it that's going to give me energy, or what is it that is giving me energy right now? So what is it that fills your tank? What is that fuel that's going to fill your tank? What things that you do when you are finished, you have energy. You feel like a whole new person, like you could take on the world. Or asking yourself, well, what is it that brings you joy right now? Or what is creating happiness for you in this season? Because it might change from season to season, and whether that's seasons of the year or seasons of life. What is it that brings you joy or creates happiness for you in this season? And then sometimes it's just stepping back and saying, well, what is it that I need most right now? What is the ingredient or the thing that is maybe missing that I know that I need right now? So as you think through your self-care recipe, and again, I challenge you all to do that. And I'd love for you, if you want, to share in the chat, what are some things that are in your self-care recipe that either, give you energy, bring you joy, or create happiness for you right now in this season, or just something that you know that you need for self-care right now. And I want to share a little bit about what I'm calling my self-care weekend, which was actually, coincidentally, this past weekend. It's been a busy season of life for me right now, and I entered this past weekend just feeling actually like my tank was empty. I was running on fumes just like my car was, and I just knew I needed to take the weekend to practice some good self-care. And so I had to take each day to ask myself those 3 questions. And on Friday, I asked myself, what is it that I need most right now? And almost immediately, the answer was sleep. Lynsie, you need sleep. And so unlike normal, I normally don't go to bed very early on Friday nights, but I did. On Friday night, I just had to take a moment to listen to my body and say, you know what, my body's telling me that I need sleep. And so I went to bed early on Friday night. And then Saturday came around and had to ask myself, again, those questions. What is it that I need most right now? Or what do I know that I need to do that's going to give me energy, that's going to fill my tank? And the answer for me on Saturday came out as, I just need to sweat it out. I need to do some exercise. I need to move my body and just do some physical activity. And so I had some extra time, so I did an extra workout. I spent some extra time doing some physical activity. Peloton was running a special on their app, and so I downloaded their app. I picked a fun biking or cycling workout, and I did it for an hour. And it was so good to just sweat it all out, to move my body. Exercise felt like medicine in that moment. And after I was done, I literally just felt like a whole new person. I just had energy to go through the rest of my day as my best self. And then Sunday came around and I had to ask myself that question again. What does self-care look like for me today? What is it that I most need? What's going to bring me joy or happiness? Or what's going to give me energy? And again, I mentioned at the beginning that I am a people person. And so the answer for me on Sunday was, I need time with my people, with my family. And my daughter was home with me, and she's a teenager. And I don't know if you guys know anything about teenagers. They don't often like spending time at home with their moms, but she was willing to do that with me on Sunday. And so literally spent the entire day with her. We listened to some music. We worked on some of her homework and stuff together. We watched a movie, had dinner, did the whole family thing on Sunday. And that was, for me on that day, that was the self-care that I needed, that when I went to bed that night, just left me with a smile on my face. It brought me a lot of joy, and it was exactly what I needed on that day for self-care. So I think hopefully what this illustrates is that self-care can look a little different every day for you. And it's really just about being in tune with yourself, asking yourself, again, those 3 questions that were on the previous slide. So what is it that's going to give you energy right now? What brings you joy or creates happiness for you in this season, or what will? And what is it that you need most right now? And as you start to ask yourself those questions, pay attention to the answers, not only so that you can take action and do those things, but also so you can start to create, again, your own self-care recipe, so that you know what those ingredients are, what it is that you know that you need for self-care. Now, I have a self-care recipe, and I was going to share it, but I think it's kind of changing and evolving, especially as we're going through this COVID. But the consistent things that I know that I need is, I know that I need physical activity 5 to 6 days a week. I just know I have to move my body. I know I've got to fuel my body with healthy foods. I know that I need that connection with other people. I know also that I need quiet time where I can reflect and plan, meditate, read, write, kind of do those quiet time activities. So I've kind of compiled my self-care recipe. I've actually written it down here in my little planner that I keep, so that I can always keep that front and center, so that when I'm feeling like I'm running on empty, I can say, okay, what ingredient in my self-care recipe is missing? And then asking myself these questions of, what can I do right now to help fill my tank? So I don't know if anyone's shared in the chat, but again, would love to hear, what is it that you know that you need for self-care? What are those non-negotiable things that you can include in your personal self-care recipe? And you want to pay it, yeah.
Oh, did you want to know what's in the chat, or do you want to do that later?
Yeah, you want to share some?
Sure, because I wasn't sure you could see it.
Yeah, I can look at it. So my self-care is not self-pity. I'm refueled more by serving others than serve myself. I love that. Taking the dogs for a walk, spending a couple hours every day with watercolor painting without any expectation of a finished product. I love that. Creativity comes out a lot in self-care. And I actually do that too in the form, I'm not a good watercolor or painter or drawer, but in writing. That's my kind of creativity for self-care. So I love that. Thank you guys for sharing. I need to have fresh fruit and plenty of water. Love that. So you want to pay attention to your signals. So just like my car was trying to tell me, hey, I'm running low on fuel, you need to fill me up. You want to pay attention to your own signals, your body, what it's telling you. Is it telling you you're full, or are you on empty? And I loved this quote that I found actually just the other day. It says, it's not enough to just notice the low fuel light inside your head. You have to do what it's telling you. Pull over, put it in park, and refuel. And I think that's what I was trying to do with my car. I saw the signal. but I wasn't listening to it. I wasn't doing what it was telling me to do, which was, hey, you need to get to a gas station and fill me up. So pay attention to your own body signals as well. So how can you know what are some signs of good self-care, and how do you know when maybe you're lacking in self-care, or that you need to add a little bit more self-care into your day? These are just some examples of good self-care. So waking up rested and excited about the day, feeling as if your work is meaningful and fulfilling, feeling slow to be frustrated or stressed. On the flip side, I know for me, when I'm not practicing good self-care, this slow to be frustrated, I am easily frustrated or easily stressed out when I'm not practicing good self-care. The ability to be compassionate for friends and family, feeling at peace and happy, feeling strong and healthy. And what I can tell you, after the weekend of self-care that I had, I came into Monday really feeling strong and healthy, ready to take on the week. I knew it probably, would bring about its own challenges, but I felt like I had really refueled my tank and was up for the challenge, was ready to take on the week. So what are some signs that self-care may be missing? And these are just some examples. Again, feeling like you can't meet the demands in any area of your life, feeling really overworked yet unfulfilled, kind of looking for ways to get out of the day's demands, feeling easily frustrated with others. That's for sure me. I get easily frustrated, easily anxious, easily stressed when I'm not practicing good self-care. Lacking energy. And I think that was a signal that was like loud and clear to me on Friday, when I just felt like I had no energy and had to ask myself, what is it that I most need? And that's when my body was telling me, you need sleep. And then again, feeling easily stressed, emotional, easily irritated. So pay attention to your body signs. You might know, I've asked this question when I've, taught this before. What are some signs for you that you might need some more self-care? What is that gauge that's telling you, hey, you're on empty. You need to fill up. There's some self-care ingredients missing here. So pay attention to your own signals so that you can really know when you might need to add in some self-care into your day. But what gets in the way of self-care? If we know that self-care is a necessity, just like getting fuel in our car is a necessity, what gets in the way? Like, what prevents us from doing self-care? And these are just a few things that I've heard. Maybe you'll resonate with some of these. Lack of time, competing priorities, work responsibilities, home responsibilities, a pandemic, feeling like self-care is selfish, like we shouldn't take time for ourselves to practice good self-care. These are some of the things that I've heard from others that get in the way of self-care. So then the question is, how do you overcome these barriers or these things that get in the way? First and foremost, and as cheesy as it might sound, believe that you're worth it. You are worth the investment in practicing good self-care so that you can show up as your best self, not only for yourself, but for others. I think someone mentioned in there that they like to serve others, and we can only serve others if we're practicing good self-care. Experiment with it. So maybe coming into today, you weren't exactly sure what your self-care looked like, or you're not exactly sure what those ingredients are. So experiment with it. Start to try different things. Pay attention. What are those things that give you energy? What are the things that fill your tank, that bring you joy? Experiment with it, and then learn from that experience. Write it down so that you know exactly what you need for self-care. Then you want to be sure to schedule it in. Again, we know that our schedules will fill up with other priorities if we don't schedule it in. So be sure to put that in your schedule and then set a reminder so that you remember that that's something that's really important to you that you want to do. Find a way to make it fun. So again, those different things that you're wanting to do. Again, if it's specifically for me, like with physical activity, I enjoy physical activity anyway, but I like to try to find ways to make it even more fun. So when I did my Peloton workout over the weekend, I did it to it was like a 90s music ride. So I was having a blast listening to all the 90s music, which was when I was a teenager, which was so fun. So find a way to make self-care fun and then celebrate those wins. I really came out of this last weekend just celebrating the fact that I was able to really prioritize self-care for me, and I called that a win. That was really a win for me over the weekend. And then just remember the self-care that you're practicing or not practicing, you're role modeling that for others. And I think I had a really big awakening a few years ago when my daughter made the comment to me that moms don't get to have fun. All they do is work. Because in what my mind that told me was I wasn't role modeling very good self-care. I don't want her to grow up thinking that moms don't get to take time for themselves or have fun or do fun things. All they get to do is work because that's all she saw me doing. So now I really do try to make it a priority to role model really good self-care so that she can see what good self-care looks like and then can practice that as she continues to get older as well. Self-care takes time, but it doesn't always have to. So you can start with what I call micro self-care, which is just self-care that takes 3 minutes or less. So if we can keep our tanks full or our batteries charged throughout the day by doing these little bits of self-care, it's so much better than running ourselves on empty and then it taking a lot longer for us to kind of refuel, if you will. So these are just some examples of some micro self-care. So again, activities that take 3 minutes or less, but cumulatively can add up to help keep your tank full throughout the day. So maybe a quick meditation, doing some 3 deep breaths before you start work for the day, trying a yoga pose at lunchtime, thinking of 3 good things you're grateful for at the end of the day. I did the second to last one yesterday as a prompt from one of our supervisors who just said, take an intentional break for the next 3 minutes before your next meeting and go outside and get a breath of fresh air. And that was so awesome for me to be able to just step outside for a minute, eat a healthy snack. So these are just some examples of some micro self-care. Again, doesn't always have to be that hour-long Peloton ride. It can be, these small moments of self-care that you add in throughout the day as well. So I'd love for you to share in the chat if you're willing to. I know we're at 5:30, but there's still time in the day. What is one thing that you are going to do for self-care today? And I was trying to think, what's the one thing that I'm going to do? And I think the one thing that I'm going to do is get in my workout again today. I really enjoy doing a bar workout through Zoom right now. And so I think I'm going to sign up for a bar workout tonight. So that's the one thing that I'm going to do for self-care. So I'd love for you all to share in the chat, what's one thing that you're going to do for self-care? Share it with us so we can hold each other accountable. Set it in your calendar and set a reminder so that you remember to get in your self-care today. And just to finish with a quote that I love, again, asking that question of what is self-care? Emily Lay says, quite often it's that activity that makes you begin to breathe a little deeper, pulling your attention and thoughts from the worries and monotony and stresses of the day and relinquishing control to an experience bigger than yourself. So with that, I will turn it back over to Dr. Joy. Are there any questions, comments, thoughts? And I guess I can read some of the things of what you guys are going to do for self-care. Teresa said, I plan on going to bed early tonight to try to catch up. I'm not getting to sleep early enough. I feel you. I did that too. I'm going to work on some much needed quilting. Take some time to read. Love it. Read a good book. Plan a Zoom meeting for special needs kids I volunteer with. I love that. Take a bubble bath. Awesome. Thank you guys all for sharing. Are there any questions or anything I can answer for you guys?
Lynsie, I was particularly fond of the suggestion about using a massager on my upper back. I think that's a great reminder. I spend far too much time with my laptop.
Nice. And I think I heard you said you're going to go get a massage for your upper back, right?
Yes.
I love that. Take that time. Schedule a massage, Ray says. Good idea.
All right. Well, I'm going to take that as a prescription, Ray.
Love it.
Well, thank you so much, Lynsie. That was awesome and a great reminder. And, we should probably have a self-care Live Well webinar about every other week. Oh, yeah, that's how often we do Live Well webinars. But it's so needed during this time. We're all working really hard during a very challenging pandemic, and hopefully hopefully nearing the end of this. I just want to remind everybody, our Live Well webinars do happen every other week, and on February 17th, Dr. Dixie Harris will be joining us, and she and I together will be talking about COVID long haulers and the role of lifestyle behaviors as people who are affected by long COVID, how lifestyle interventions around diet and physical activity and sleep and stress management can help people recover from long COVID symptoms. And I'll share a very quick story that I had one of our physician colleagues reach out to me just the other day after I had shared some strategies, lifestyle strategies for our patients suffering from long COVID symptoms, that she had recommended an anti-inflammatory diet to that individual, and she saw her back in follow-up 2 weeks later, and the patient was feeling much, much better, having made some changes to her dietary intake. So lifestyle can work. So with that, thank you again, everyone, for joining us. Please join us in 2 weeks as we talk about lifestyle and long COVID. And have a great evening and practice good self-care. Thank you again, Lynsie.
Thank you, and thank you, everybody, for joining.